Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me here on the Bare Bones Yoga Podcast, Conversations for Yoga Teachers. My name is Karen Fabian. I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga. I'm a yoga teacher and educator, and my goal here is to provide you, the yoga teacher, and other listeners with interesting, compelling content designed to pique your interest in teaching, help you grow as a teacher, and support you on your path to sharing this wonderful practice with your students. I've been teaching for over 14 years, and through my classes, workshops, online courses, books, and other content, I focus on the anatomy of yoga and how teachers can learn this complex subject and present it to their students in an understandable way, all designed to help them bring more impact to their teaching. Even though we're not in the same room, I want you to envision for each episode that we've sat down for tea in a cozy coffee shop. Some days we'll talk about technical teaching topics, while some days we might have a teacher friend join in on the conversation, and other days we'll face some of the personal challenges that can come up when we take on the journey of being a teacher, knowing that the more authentic we can be, the more we can impact others. For more information about my products and programs and to contact me at any time, just visit my website at barebonesyoga.com. Let's get into today's episode. Okay, we are on. Hi, Anita. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
Good, good. So for our listeners, I want to just orient them to kind of how we ended up connecting and what was kind of the lead up to this conversation. So about 3 or 4 days ago, I posted to my Facebook group, which is the Bare Bones Yoga Anatomy Work Group, and I invited teachers to come onto the podcast to share anything that they were working on as teachers, because I know that there are definitely common themes that come up for teachers, you know, really regardless of experience, regardless of age, regardless of teaching style. There are just common themes. And so I was looking for people who were willing to kind of say, hey, I'll be on the podcast, I'll share my thoughts. And Anita, you were one of the ones. So I'm super glad to meet you. I know we've talked a little online, but it's always great to see. The listeners can't see you, but I can see you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I've listened to you for quite a while, so it's just kind of an honor.
Oh, nice. Awesome. So again, just to let people know, so I'm in Boston and Anita is in Tennessee. What part did you say? Cooksville?
Cookville.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And also the listeners can't see, but Anita did her teacher training in Alaska. So she is wearing a Alaska sweatshirt with Alaska on there. So she's got kind of all the vibes of Alaska and Tennessee kind of represented. So it's really cool. So I thought a good place for us to start would be to have you, I know you wrote me, but kind of for folks that are listening and, you know, you've listened to the podcast, so you're just kind of giving us a sense of how you found yoga and what got you into teaching.
Okay. Well, in Tennessee, there's not a lot of opportunities at the time when I was growing up to have yoga. So I really didn't experience yoga until, I was probably in my 30s, and I was going to work out at a gym, one of the local gyms, and they had a yoga class. And so I kind of just stumbled into it, not really even knowing what I was going in for, and just absolutely fell in love with the class. And so from there, I just started like trying to find out everything I possibly could, because I lived in a small town, Lebanon. It's not a small town anymore, but it was at the time, and there were no yoga studios. So I mostly did DVDs. You know, I would just go and start trying to buy DVDs and stuff and just start doing it on my own by watching the DVDs. And so I didn't really get to start out by like most people, like always going to, you know, a bunch of different yoga classes. And in fact, I didn't know for the longest time that there were different types of yoga. Yeah. But because I just loved it, and it made me feel so good. I'm a dental hygienist by by career. And so I realized how it really helped me in order to be able to, go to work each day, because we're sitting over patients,
Yeah.
and it really helped with my neck, my hands, my back, and then I started just thinking like, oh my gosh, this is just so awesome. I just, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be able to do what I was doing. So I thought, I just loved it so much. I wanted to learn more about it, and I wanted to share this with other people. So that went on for many years there, just kind of off and on, doing my own thing. And then when I was living up in Alaska, there was yoga studios everywhere. Every
Wow.
corner or
You wouldn't
whatever had a
necessarily
yoga
think that
studio.
about Alaska now, would you?
Yeah. Well, in Anchorage, yes, in Anchorage there is. There's just a lot of opportunities, and there were so many types. And so I started going to yoga classes when I lived there, and that's, I kind of met some people that way. And then I came back to Tennessee, and unfortunately I went through a divorce. And I just decided when I went through my divorce that I kind of like jumped off the deep end and decided I was going to do something for myself. And
Awesome.
so I packed up and I moved up to Alaska and went through teacher training. And
Wow.
yeah.
Now, what made
It
you
was,
do it out there versus somewhere closer?
well, I guess because just being up there and going to the yoga classes, I
Yeah.
just felt like they were more experienced, and I guess I really didn't investigate that much around in my area. And
Yeah.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
after going back up there, I found out, there's several in Nashville and all that. But in Lebanon, I mean, we didn't even have a yoga studio until maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, and there's still only like 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like there's a big opportunity for that.
Sure. So when was
So,
it that you went to Alaska for your teacher training? A couple years ago, or?
yes, I graduated 2 years ago, which would
Okay.
have been the end of April,
Okay.
2017.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I went up there in 2016.
Yep.
Hmm.
So you did your training, and then what?
Then I decided that I was coming back to Tennessee because I just felt like I'd done a lot of healing from the divorce. And
Yeah.
of course, it was time to move back to be closer to my family.
Yeah.
Alaska's just really far away from
Yeah.
Tennessee. And so I have grandkids, and I decided I should move back. And
Yeah.
so I moved back, and of course, I started looking for opportunities to teach. And it was mostly fill in. There was the yoga studio there in town. I connected with them. And so she had me to kind of try out for them. And
Yeah.
then started doing more like fill in. And then I did some fill in for her also at one of the recreation areas, doing some chair yoga and beginner and intermediate yoga for
Yeah.
mostly some of the older
Yeah.
generation there.
Yeah.
And so mostly I've done fill in until I moved up to Cookeville. I moved, it's about an hour and a half from Nashville, but and then I connected with a studio there. And I wanted to teach like beginner or immediate, but what she said, we really need someone to come in and teach chair yoga. We don't have this, which I enjoy teaching,
Yeah.
but this studio is on the edge of a university, and so most of the people that go there are really young
Yeah.
people. And so in the beginning we had about maybe 6 ladies would come, but they want to do the hot yoga there, so the
Yeah.
room is hot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the older ladies that came to the class, the heat really bothered with them
Yeah.
because their medications and things that they take.
Yeah.
And So I lost clients instead
Yeah.
of gaining clients and I tried to talk to the owner, and she just was more or less like, well, if they would just give it a try and keep coming, they would realize how beneficial the heat is. And I'm like, well, but I
Yeah.
tried to let's go halfway here. So we did turn it down some, but I had a hard time getting people to come back. And
Were you
so,
teaching the chair yoga in a heated room?
yes,
Oh, wow.
yes,
I've never
I
quite
know.
heard of that combination.
Yeah, well, me either. Till that, I mean, this was the owner of she wants all of her classes to be done in the heated room. She
Huh.
just feels like it's very beneficial. And that was my first experience with it also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then after that, I had some job changes, and I ended up moving um, away for a few months, and so I just kind of we just kind of ended it,
Yeah.
and now I'm just kind of like, I don't really know what to do.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like the whole kind of process of starting to teach after you came out of your teacher training. How has that been? Like what kinds of things have come up for you when you started to teach? It could be tactical
Yeah,
things like I didn't know how to do X, Y, and Z, or it could be just other feeling based things like, wow, I feel like really different standing in front of a class teaching. Anything.
right. Um, well, first of all, I felt like at graduation, I felt like this enormous, like, oh my gosh, I have learned so much. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I felt like I know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a common. Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
common.
that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
And actually, my first class to teach up in Alaska, I filled in for my instructor. She had a class at the hospital where she did, it was mostly chair yoga, but it was with cancer survivors and people
Yeah.
going through cancer
Yeah.
and other, issues. They could come
Sure.
to the class. And I started going there because we had to do some rotations where we would go and observe, and I just kind of fell in love with that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, when I got back to Tennessee, first of all, it's very hard because being in the South, it's a lot of people look at yoga as a religion and not a,
Yeah. Like a form of
if,
exercise.
yeah. And they're like, it's hard to kind of get some people to come because they're
Sure.
like, oh, I'm not a Buddhist, and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So you have that to deal with. And then I think what came up for me in teaching is I just didn't feel confident.
Yeah.
I just always felt like the other teachers, because they've been teaching longer, like, when I would sub for their classes, that the people would be going like, oh,
Yeah.
she's new and she's not experienced. And so I always felt very inadequate, I
Right.
guess. And
Right.
I would just like, study my notes. I'd look at yoga videos. I go to YouTube and I would study and come up with all these sequences. And I felt like I was pretty good at that. But then
Yeah.
when it came to deliver it,
Yeah.
I was like a nervous wreck. I mean,
Yeah.
I felt like I stumbled over my words, and
Yeah.
I would forget things, and I don't know, I just
Yeah.
I just kind of felt like a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that. I can relate to those feelings of being new and having the knowledge, but feeling like your cup is so full, you don't quite know how to translate the knowledge into the action words and phrases that the students need to do the practice.
Right.
Yeah. So you were doing kind of this research on your own. So did you find that you were spending like a good amount of time to get ready to teach classes?
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
A
it was
lot.
kind of like a little like project.
Yes, it was. It would be like a project. And, I mean, I would be like, okay, I'm going to come up with a sequence,
Yeah.
and I would be like, okay, so I'd get all my sequencing books and I would, then I'd start going through YouTube and watching videos and
Yeah.
I would, and so, yeah, it just kind of seemed like this long project. And, I kept calling back my instructor back in Alaska going like, when am I going to ever feel like I
Yeah.
could just walk into a room and
Yeah.
teach,
Yeah. Yeah.
without like having to do 50 hours of preparation to
Right.
walk in there. And I
Right.
still, even after doing all the work, I still felt like, I'm just not ready,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And so it sounds like you felt like you were doing kind of the logical steps that you could think of to prepare yourself, but still walking into the room, it wasn't like that preparation gave you the feeling of confidence or even the smooth execution that it was just flowing from you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, if you were to kind of envision, kind of the ideal way of being that you would like to own, like in your bones, in your body, what would that look like? Like if you could kind of envision yourself, at a point in your teaching where it wasn't effort, like what would that look like? Would you be doing the prep you were doing? How would it feel for you to be standing in front of the room? Like kind of put on like that kind of like almost
Yeah.
like putting on a coat. What would that look and feel like?
Well, I just feel like I would have confidence, that I would feel like when I went in to teach, that I could just like pull out of my brain, out of the filing cabinet, things that, like be
Yeah.
able to put a sequence together and say, like, if someone was in my room that had some kind of medical issues or whatever, it wouldn't like scare me to death that I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I can't do that, what I plan to do now, that I would be able to like, just be able to like, okay, change of plans, we're going to do this,
Yeah.
like I felt like when I went in to teach that I had this paper laid out in front of me and we were going to do this, and that it was really hard to, like, if I had someone come in and had some kind of
Yeah.
medical issues or something, and that maybe we shouldn't do that, that would be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I would have the experience to be able to just be able to change plan from plan A, go to plan
Right.
B, and it not rattle me and
Right.
get me
Right.
all like, you know,
Right. Right.
and I guess, I mean, I know that it takes time to develop, I realize that, but I'm also a type of person that it has taken a lot for me to be able to even stand up in front of a room, because I'm the type of person that avoids getting up in front of an audience.
Uh-huh.
I avoided piano recitals. I mean, anything if it involved getting up in front of people. So this has been something that's really taken me out of my comfort zone and really pushed me.
Yeah.
And I know going through teacher training, they told me, they said, well, we felt like he was probably the one that probably improved the most, just
Yeah.
because I was so terrified
Yeah.
to get up. And even though I knew these 20 people in my class, they were
Yeah.
like family, it still just unnerved me. And I don't know how to get past that
Yeah.
feeling of
Yeah.
feeling frightened,
Yeah.
like, and I
So
don't know, I know they're just people, but I'm just always like thinking what they're, like, oh, she's not a very good teacher, or
yeah.
I don't, and I also am so scared I don't want to hurt somebody, and
Right. Yeah. There's all the
you
things.
know.
So when you were in your training, you probably had to practice teach, right?
Oh yes, yes.
So how did you get past your stage fright, your fear of being, how'd you do it?
I don't know that I ever really got past it. I just got to where
But you did it, right? It's not like you said,
oh
I'm
no,
not.
I did. Yeah, I had to do it in order to pass. I mean, we
Right.
had to do a final practicum, and
So walk me through
so,
that. How did you do it?
um, well, I prepared a lot, and
Yeah.
I would just practice at home, and I would videotape myself, and when I'm getting better about realizing that, if something does go wrong, it's just that's the way it is, and they're not going to kill me or anything.
Right. So
you know.
so, so,
So
so you just you had the fear, but you did it anyway, basically.
right,
Because it wasn't
I
like,
did push through it.
yeah, it wasn't like, it sounds to me like it wasn't as if your preparation and your teacher training got you to a point where you had no fear. You just got to the point where you did the prep you could, you were still terrified, but you still did it.
Correct.
And partly it was because you were, you knew you had to do it to pass the final practicum and graduate from the teacher training. So, the only reason I had you walk through that is to, number one, your experience is very, I don't want to say it's very common to diminish it, but I want to say it's common so that you're not alone in feeling this way. Because I hear this from a lot of teachers. And in fact, I hear it from teachers who have graduated from teacher training, and the fear has gotten so big that they're not teaching. And so here they've spent thousands of dollars on training, and they're terrified, and they're waiting for this like magical moment when they're gonna feel ready. And so I'll see them after I've seen them for the anatomy part of the training. I'll see them 6 months ahead, from in the future, or a year in the future. No, I'm not teaching yet, and I'm not ready. No, and so, part of it is that kind of dream vision that there's going to be a magical day when you're ready, which is kind of a fallacy. There really is no magical day that you're going to be ready. And the other reason I wanted you to walk through that is to have you, because sometimes I think it's hard for us to see what we're doing because we're in it, doing it. It's kind of like that Buddhist idea of the seer and the seen, where there's like, you can step outside yourself in meditation and kind of watch yourself. Right. And so, especially when we're in a situation where we're feeling fear, it's really hard for us to step outside ourselves because we're just so mired in the muck of the anxiety and the fear. So you walking me through that is for me to hear it, and for you to hear it, is an example of you're moving into fear and doing things anyway. It's already in your constitution to do that, right? You already have the ability to act despite the fear, right? To just keep moving forward. And not everybody has that, right? Sometimes people are so in fear, they're completely immobilized. And so you've got that ability. So it's just, part of it is just taking a moment out of compassion for yourself and just kind of acknowledging yourself, hey, I can do things despite the fear. I have done them. And, fear is a great motivator in some ways, as long as it's like healthy stress. And the other thing that I was thinking of, you said you were a dental hygienist, and whenever I go to the dentist, I think, wow, this must be such an interesting job for someone to do. It's like a very personal thing to look in someone's mouth and to be like right on top of them, look, And so I think about every once in a while when I go to get my teeth cleaned, wow, if you were a new dental hygienist, it must be really scary and awkward to be like, can you sit here? Oh, okay. So put this thing around your neck. It's just a little bib. And then to get your tools and to be like in the person's mouth. So do you have memories of your transition from new dental hygienist? You don't have to walk us through it, but you see where I'm going, right? Like,
yes.
There's this knowledge base for whatever it is. And on the front end, it's really, it must have been really messy. You were probably dropping stuff. Oh, sorry, let me get that. I imagine I would be if I was a new dentist.
Yes. Yeah, so I remember when I got out of dental hygiene school, I felt the same way, like I had learned so much. And then when you
Yeah.
go in, you feel like you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been a dental hygienist for 21 years. I've been in the dental field 34 years. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like, you know, and I still get nervous today. Like right now, I am in between jobs. The
Yeah.
doctor I work for retired. And so I am actually going out and interviewing.
Yeah.
And ever since I come back from Alaska, I've not really had a stable hygiene job. So I've been having to put myself out there again.
Yeah.
And it's really nerve-wracking because a lot of things have changed.
Sure.
And I had taken 6 years off for a while, not worked. So going back into it, and now there's all these new girls and younger girls. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of odd that you bring this up, because I kind of feel like the same thing with dental hygiene as I do with the yoga. I feel very uncomfortable around the younger
Yeah.
people than I do people my own age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And older. And like at the yoga studio where I was teaching there for a while, I mean, they mostly do the, the hot 26,
Right.
that kind of thing. And I just feel that I'm out of place there. Like,
Yeah.
that's not my thing. And I
Yeah.
also feel out of place in some of the newer dental offices, and mostly the younger people.
Yeah.
So I feel inadequate, like I feel like they're judging me.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that, I mean, that's something that yoga teachers don't often talk about, is this kind of aspect of teaching that is a reality, which is that you're standing in front of a group of people and you sometimes have to kind of manage the voices in your own head that are your perception of what other people's perceptions are. So you can kind of, get really adept at talking them through the practice while also managing what you're perceiving without any real idea if your perception is reality, because they're not saying anything. It's not like they're literally saying, wow, this person, blah, 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 blah. But you could make all these massive assumptions just by their body language, their facial expressions. And then all of a sudden you've got this whole kind of conversation in your head. So I don't know. Have you ever heard of the book, The 4 Agreements?
No.
Yeah. Write that down, because
Okay.
I would highly recommend that book. You can even just go on YouTube and there's probably a quick synopsis to give you an idea. So I won't go into all the history, but the 4 agreements are 4 basic tenets that this man by the name of Don Miguel Ruiz held out as kind of a template for living in a healthy way from a mindset and mindfulness perspective. And he comes from an Aztec culture where there were very deep cultural ties to nature and to spirituality. And so this all comes from there. One of the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions. And so it's this idea. And when you could probably read the book in a weekend. It's a small, and again, you can Google stuff on YouTube and they probably have little blurbs about each agreement. But when I read the book, I remember thinking how many times during every day I make assumptions about what other people think about me. And, many times they're incorrect or they're invalidated. You have no way to really validate if they're true. So I just mentioned that just because it's so common. And I think it is such a common theme for teachers, because what are we doing? We're standing there having a conversation with ourselves because no one is talking to us. We're just like, let's do that. And, maybe then saying cues that are, helping people, kind of tap into their own bodies. And maybe we say something and then in our head we think, oh, that was stupid. Why did I say that? No one really could understand, So we have to kind of manage our energy and our thoughts in this realm in order to be effective. Because think about if you have like a certain amount of energy and you're spending X amount of it managing all of this, and then there's this whole other side, whatever's left to give to the class, you know, we obviously want to maximize what we've got to give to the class. So the more we can just kind of be, it's almost like you're just kind of being like a conduit. You're not, I always think of it like, there's another analogy I can make. I think of like flight attendants, and I think if a flight attendant, whether working on the ground or working on the plane, got intricately involved in every single interaction they had with a passenger, they would probably not last but a couple days. Because airports are just meant, and airplanes are meant to be stressful situations. They just are by their nature. And so I think of successful flight attendants as people who can just manage energy really well. They're just there, they're doing their thing. There's bad energy coming in and it just kind of bounces off them, and there's good energy coming in, and they might acknowledge that, oh yeah, thanks, this was a great flight. Oh, thank you. But it's not like they're like, oh God, I'm doing such a great, you know, like nothing really, they just stay in their zone. Right. And I think of like healthy yoga teaching is kind of like that, because what are we doing? We're, you know, giving people a series of movements that sometimes kind of bring them up against their edges from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. And so sometimes we're the person, because we're the person doing that, we're also the person that perceives we're also getting the daggers, right? So through whatever it is, like a weird look, or no, I don't want that block, or leaving class early, right? That no one likes when that happens. All of a sudden that's like a big deal. Oh, it's about me. They don't like my class. They're leaving early. Oh, I had a guy leave early yesterday with like 3 minutes before the end of the class. And in my head, I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't wait 3 minutes. But then in my head, I was also like, I don't know that guy's story. For all I know, he's got to go take care of his sick mother. I have no idea. So I just kind of pulled it back to what I know, which is there are people in the room in Shavasana right now, and I am holding space for them. And I don't know that guy's story. And so it doesn't make, you know, but it's like until, like you were saying, until you kind of get that reservoir of experience, those things will, you know, sometimes bring these things up. And when you think about it, when you were saying about the, you know, the person coming to your class with a medical issue, I mean, despite how things have changed to a certain extent in the dental hygiene industry, you still have 25 years of experience. No one's going to get in the way of that. You may have to learn a new machine or infrared things or whatever it is. And so I'll bet if someone came to you for a dental cleaning, brand new patient, and they were like, by the way, I have a cardiac, you know, I had a cardiac cath, or I'm on cardiac, you'd be like, okay, cool. Just tell me what med's on. I'm going to tell you not to swallow, you know, whatever it is. So I guess I only bring that up to give you faith that in your process in teaching, just like in your process in your career, you will, through experience, build to a point where, you know, you're going to have, it's that kind of, you're getting from like all these things you don't know, and you're feeling really anxious, and then you're kind of knowing more things, and you're feeling, you know, and then it's kind of like you're just unconsciously competent. You're just doing the things because they're just in your repertoire. You know?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to get to, is where it just felt like it flowed. You know, like you know, like a yoga sequence, like it flowed. You know.
Yeah, and I, you know, I just want to acknowledge you too for really two things. For number one, you know, having, you know, really being open about how you feel, because not a lot of teachers do that, and I think that's where people can get stuck, right? They're unwilling to kind of be honest about how they're feeling, and also number two, bringing up the issue about feeling a little bit insecure about your age. I mean, I'm 55, so I feel that too sometimes when I'm in studios and there's a lot of people in their 20s and 30s practicing or teaching. And so I, you know, I can relate to that. I think too, the other thing that you brought up though, that kind of hits home for me in a way, is finding, you know, kind of, and this doesn't necessarily mean you acknowledge that feeling and then you're just going to another environment. But I think it does point to finding places to teach where you feel like there's an environment where you are thriving as well, and where your offerings are fitting the clientele. And, you know, I mean, that example you gave of doing chair yoga in a heated room, that to me is a bit of a mismatch, because chair yoga by its nature is for, usually people who have some kind of mobility challenge where they need to be sitting, and heat would probably just exacerbate whatever that is.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So, I think there's just some practical things there.
Right. Well, I kind of realized that maybe that wasn't the greatest place for me to be teaching. I thought because it was like 10 minutes from my house, and such a cute little studio. But I did call and speak with one of my instructors that I went through teacher training with up in Alaska, and I talked to her, and I just had a really bad experience the last time I taught there was because I filled in doing a restorative class, and for the teacher that owns it, and she's been teaching a long time and she has a great following, and I was doing a restorative class, and I had really worked hard on my my class, and I had a couple of girls that came in that I know always come regularly to her class, and they could tell they were very disappointed that she wasn't there. And it was kind of like they just kept doing their own thing. Like no matter what I would say, they would just do their own thing. And they were right in front of me. So it was very distracting.
Right.
And I would just try to put it out of my head.
Yeah.
And to keep on trying to focus on the other people in the class. But at the end of the class, I, thanked them for coming, and, and it was like, they wouldn't even hardly speak to me, know, and it was, and so that was just kind of like, oh my, and that really rattled me. So, but then I called Margot, my instructor, and because I really would like to work with people, more one-on-one and kind of get into the yoga therapy training. So I've been thinking about doing a whole total training just on becoming a yoga therapist. But at this point in time in my life, the money, to come up with all that it's a lot. And she told me, she says, Anita, you have what it takes. She goes, you just study and do every little workshop that that you can to get more knowledge. And she said, you just have to start putting yourself out there. She says, go to the hospitals, go to the seniors clubs, go to, just keep going, putting yourself out there. And that's the part I have a hard time with, is selling myself, because I hear them, like, well, who are you, and what, how long have you been doing this, and what do you know? And
well, that's kind of like, I just want to mention one thing. There's a clicking sound. I don't know if there's something on your desk that's like hitting the computer. I just want to say if you're aware. This comes up in a lot of different industries. This comes up in a lot of different ways. This sense of like an imposter syndrome, like, who are you to be doing X, whatever it is, in this case, teaching yoga. And so, I think that's a real challenge that teachers face, especially when you're new, because, you have this perception that everybody else, or you could have this perception that everybody else has so much more experience than you. So therefore, you must be less than, because you don't, have the same amount of experience. And as far as, so I guess I just want to acknowledge that, number one, you're not alone in feeling that way. And number two, some of that is just, you already have shown that you can move forward anyway, despite having fear. So it's just kind of more of that, which it sounds like your teacher colleague there was trying to kind of tell you, just keep moving through that fear anyway. Because at the end of the day, the experience is what you need, and doing nothing doesn't give you the experience. It's kind of facing the fear anyway, doing it anyway, with very little attachment to results, which is, again, another Buddhist theme, right? Just do it for the sake of doing it. As far as the students coming to class and doing their own thing, that is just a common theme that will happen. I very recently had a similar example, and I just moved myself to another part of the room. So instead of teaching from the center of the room, I taught from off to the right, because I literally could not stay focused on the greater group because of two people that were, or one person that was doing their own thing. And so that will happen. I mean, people are bringing all of their personalities and stuff to class, and it's not like they're going to come into the room and magically be able to put all that to the side. And, I mean, there's probably a lot we could talk about in regards to that kind of stuff. I would just say for you as a teacher, for me as a teacher, we have to we're there to do a job that involves a bunch of people and leading a bunch of people through a sequence. If we were going to lead one person through a sequence that was just for them, there wouldn't be a bunch of people in the room. So if you have a couple of people that are doing their own thing, again, it's a matter of you have a certain amount of energy and you've got people in the room that need to receive this energy to be taken through the sequence. Just don't give those people your energy. They're obviously going to do their own thing. They're managing their own energy. So let them do it. And then, like you said, you're in your head, you're like, oh, why are these people doing this? This is so rude. Oh, now I'm getting all thrown. Should I be doing something different? Should I now shift on the fly to meet their needs? No, they're just going to do their own thing. I mean, your original thought, like, what are they doing? Like, that's the right thought. They should not be doing that. So you're just going to put it to the side and teach to the greater group and keep things moving for them. And, you know what? There are probably plenty of people that leave classes that never thank their teacher that are thankful that they came. And so I don't know, I don't always put a lot of stock into if somebody says something to me or if somebody doesn't. I also think too, and this was something I picked up from a friend of mine, a colleague teacher friend of mine, Kat Fowler. She said one time when we were talking, she said, whenever I have someone in class who's, just kind of bringing attention to them in some way, she said, I always try to keep the possibilities open to what that person's story is, right? Like maybe this is the most they could do in that moment to manage what was happening. Maybe the fact that they're there is such a gift to them because they're really struggling with a lot right now, whatever it is, right? Like, because we can just get all in the resistance energy of like, why isn't this person doing what I'm teaching? And now this person's throwing me off. And so I think sometimes if we can flip it to I'm not saying you want to psychoanalyze a person in that moment, but just keeping open to possibility that I don't know this person's story. I don't know why they're doing this. They're here though, they're doing yoga and there's good in that. And even if they leave and they think, oh my God, I really wanted teacher X and teacher Y was there and why that, you still did your job. Right? You can go to bed at night and you're in integrity as a teacher and you thanked everybody and you showed up and you took them from A to Z. And that's what you're there to do. Right. And so all that other stuff, it's just like, it sucks the energy right out of your sails. And, I think over time, as you get more experience, it's the same with the flight attendants. You'll just know those are just like the universe, just kind of dangling little temptations for you, like, okay, Anita, we're gonna push your buttons here. Are you gonna bite? We're gonna do it over here, and you're gonna just get more confident and be like, sorry, not going there, right? It's the same with other things you've done in your life. Even when you raise kids. I don't have kids, but I teach kids and teach bunch of toddlers yoga. You got to make choices all the time about what you're going to keep moving forward, or you're going to deal with the tantrum, or you're going to deal with the one that's fighting with the other one. I mean, it's like, me and 10 toddlers, it's like, yeah, you got to pick your battles. So but no. All right. So here's what I want to do. We're going to wrap up. This is really more kind of a discovery conversation. And I just want to massively acknowledge you for just putting it all out there and just being, really courageous to share. I mean, this is the first time we've talked. You've never seen me right? And I am just so touched by your willingness to be open, because these are the kinds of conversations that teachers need to have that we never seem to have, because we go into training and then we go out into the world and everybody's in their own little cocoon. And there's really not a lot of opportunities for teachers to have conversations. I've been on calls like this week with Sweden, with Portland, Oregon, now with you. And, it doesn't matter where we are. We're all dealing with some real common themed issues. And so I really, really thank you for putting it out there, because this will, for the podcast especially, that's why I called it Conversations for Yoga Teachers, because I want us to have, you obviously can't talk to everybody, but you can talk to teachers and have them be willing to put it out there. And then, maybe in little ways, teachers will start talking to their teachers they teach with, like, oh, I'm listening, and how do you feel about this? And, whatever it is. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, because you listen to your podcast has helped me tremendously, talking about limiting beliefs and all that. Between you and I do some work, listen to Mel Robbins a lot. So I'm really trying to work on myself.
Yes.
But I think you're the only podcast or whatever that I have been able to find that really actually helps us as yoga teachers and really try, especially us new teachers. And I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Really don't know.
Thank you. Yeah. And, I also want to just say before we go, I really give you a lot of credit for, and again, I'm not 20, so I can, so I deal with a little bit of that age issue as well. And, you're out there and you're doing it. And there is a place for all of us in the yoga world. And, there are, I'm sure, young people that can teach older people and older people that can teach younger people, there's nothing to say that age is a criteria. Although I acknowledge that it brings up a lot of issues. And again, you're moving forward anyway. And so I really think in that way, you're really a leader in that way. And I think, as you start to go out and start finding like people that appreciate what you bring, that's where things are going to start clicking for you. I think really it's just a matter of just acknowledging the fear and taking the step, acknowledging the fear and taking the step. And it's just like you're one foot in front of the other, and having the conversations and making the calls, subbing the classes. And that's just, you just kind of, it's like the ball rolling downhill. You're just picking up speed, even in these little steps. So keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. And all of this is good fodder for the other thing you're doing. You're looking for a new position in your industry, and some of this is coming up too. So it kind of is nice. It kind of dovetails nicely for both paths for you. So I have a good feeling that in a few months you're going to kind of come out the other side, and you'll probably have things in place kind of in both ends, and that'll be a really nice blend. Maybe you'll end up.
We hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you'll teach someplace, or maybe you'll get a job someplace and you can teach all the hygienists yoga moves, because oh my God, I can't imagine being over people all day is not great for the upper body and the feet and the hip, all of it. So that would be a really nice way to blend your love of yoga with your job and in an appropriate way. So, yeah. Okay, my friend. Well, I will talk to you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a great weekend.
Okay. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, Anita.